right? So try to unlock those sort of questions. And if we can generate data that's related to those questions at scale with reproducibility, that's, I think, going to be either for atomic or for others, right? In other drug discovery fields, that's where the value is going to be unlocked. And in terms of the pace, I think we're making strides every day. So I don't think it's going to be too terribly long, like in the order of years. 2, 3 years, we might see some additional improvements. Perhaps we see additional de novo antibody work. We start seeing chemistry hits come out of thin air, right, on some really challenging targets. Those things are going to continue to happen. Well, I think we'll rack up some successes. And then if we could only figure out how to apply these lessons to clinical development, where most of the money and is going into drug discovery and development, that I think is going to be a huge game changer. But my suspicion is that's going to take time.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear all of those perspectives. I mean, I have a few things to sort of run past you just to get your perspective, and I'm going to use outside of life sciences examples, more or less to sort of, hopefully make this more synergistic for everybody, right? I mean, I sort of think of the challenge in front of you, um, especially whenever I see things. I mean, so we create a lot of images for marketing materials using AI. I mean, it's just, one of the primary uses that we have. I've never had very many graphic designer interactions, and it's primarily because we've been able to leverage AI for the things that we do. But I mean, I know where to look in an image, and I sort of train my team on the same thing. Like,
Mhm.
whenever you have people sitting around a table, I want everybody's hands, if they're visible, I want them to have 5 fingers. I don't want them to have six. I don't want them to have four. I don't want like a really odd shaped, looking hand or anything
Yeah.
like that. All of those to me are triggers for an AI created image. In addition to that, the text has to be spot on. It always amazes me how many models get it wrong. The latest image gen model from Google has done a pretty good job. We've got a couple other ones that we use primarily whenever we're trying to get really high quality text and things like that out of things that have worked, extremely well. But I mean, it's always amazing to me, how often just that those simple things are not right. And my son recently was working on, he's an instructor for physical therapy, and he uses quite a few images in the things that he does, and he wants some specific images, and so we were trying to use some of the models. And then each time I would present an image that I thought looked okay, he would come back and say things like, well, it forgot the deltoid muscle and things like that. So it's like, if you look anatomically, if it can't get things right, I kind of worry a little bit then about, the applicability, I guess, of, like how far you could carry this with drug discovery. But to sort of, finalize my statement, then, get your reaction. The part I absolutely love, though, on the other side, I'm not a coder, so I don't write code, but I come up with creative ideas, I feel like, for programs all the time based on conversations I have with you guys, and just conversations in passing about business problems people have. And I'm like, look, I know I can automate this section. If I had a user interface for this other part, I could have like a complete program to hand back to you that solves your problem. And on the vibe coding side, I mean, it's been amazing. I mean, I sort of sit here and like, start at the highest level, like,
Ooh.
here's my idea. Can you create a user interface for this? And then I sort of link it with some of the automation tools that we have. And I'm like, so here's, essentially how I'm going to get data to you. And I want you to be able to send data back. And it's amazing on that front. I mean, and in a day or so, I can normally have a pretty complex application that has full login capabilities and everything else for somebody to go use to solve a business problem. So I've absolutely loved that side of it, and can't wait to
Ooh.
see it on the drug discovery side now.
Yeah. But I think you made a really great point, right? On artificial intelligence is at a point where it can do extremely powerful things, and it's a wonderful tool. Um, but you have to use it the right way, and it doesn't replace the people that have the expertise, right? So that process of taking a look at the hands, right? Or, hey, you didn't have a deltoid muscle. That's kind of weird, right? Um, the same thing applies to drug discovery, right? Our models might come up with a structure with high confidence that, nope, that doesn't exist in life, right? You can tell because you know something about how RNA folds. Or, the same thing is true for chemistry, right? Well, great, that molecule looks like a grease ball. That's not developable, right? So I don't think that artificial intelligence, at least in any sort of foreseeable future, is going to be replacing the scientists and folks who understand the drug discovery process. Instead, what I think is AI is a tool, and
Yeah.
it's going to be kind of the standard, right, by which many difficult, currently untractable problems are solved going forward, but with the guidance and help and experience of a person who's been there and done it. Um, right. So yeah, I think it's going to be a while before we tell chemists they can go home.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, yeah, I mean, I just see too many opportunities still to get it wrong. And then whenever you got humans involved or lives on the line, the last thing you want to do is trust something that it really shouldn't be making decisions on its own. So yeah, thank you for that perspective. Mark, what's the
Absolutely.
greatest piece of leadership advice that you've ever received?
Yeah. I think for me that's a two-part. One is listen. But it's not just listen, it's listen for understanding, right? Take a moment to take a step back and truly understand what somebody's telling you beyond the words, right? What are their concerns? Where is this coming from? What does this mean? Right. And try to elicit and be curious enough about what they're saying to truly get it. And that's a very necessary thing before you do any sort of reaction. And then the other part of that is the reacting. Don't hit the panic button. Doesn't matter what it is. Don't hit the panic button. I mean, unless it's on fire, literally. Right. But have that, I have a bias for action, of course, and I think many of us do in the industry. But taking that beat to kind of just step back, think, look at the big picture, and ask, okay, what do we do now? Let's not hit that panic button.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting statement, from a panic button standpoint, because one of the startups that I was in, um, one of the interesting things that I sort of, you get sort of this, I don't know, that like, somebody crying wolf a little too often, um,
Mhm.
reaction. And I just remember multiple times, right, that the essentially we get the latest research information back from the machines that we were operating, and the data would be there. The scientists would be looking at it, and they're like, man, I don't even know if we're gonna have a job tomorrow. Because I mean, this essentially says that, what everything that we're doing is wrong, and that, we, you know essentially, can't make final decisions on the diagnostic that we were developing. And I remember multiple times sitting in meetings where the data science people were sitting there and they're like, well, what's the problem? And they're like, well, because of this and this, we can't see anything that essentially looks like, we're able to detect, the thing that we're looking for. And the couple filters and some fancy math, they eventually hand back the data to the scientists, and they're like, oh, this is perfect, this is exactly what we need. Emergency avoided, and we all get to go back to our normal day job again. But it was just kind of funny because I just remember multiple sessions where it's like, look, this is bleak. And I'm like, eventually I got to a point where I was like, look, before I start thinking about anything else, I want to hear like what the whole team has to say. Let's sort of make sure that nobody else has any other options. Because I mean, normally we had brilliant enough people where somebody would come in and say, I think if we do this and this, we can overcome this problem, or there was some way of filtering the data differently, where all of a sudden we got a different look. So yeah, I agree with the don't hit the panic button too.
Yeah. I think we may have worked at the same place, Don. Yeah. It's an
Yeah,
important lesson.
yeah, absolutely.